Hello and welcome. You found the Social Work Podcast. My name's Jonathan Singer, and I'll be your host as we explore all things social work. Hey there, podcast listeners. Jonathan here. Today's episode of the Social Work Podcast tackles something that everyone needs, but not everyone gets: career guidance. Now, back in 2002, when my sister was getting her MBA, she mentioned that she and her classmates had resume building workshops, mock interviews in booths that were dedicated for job practice, and that companies would even fly in to interview MBA students for jobs. Wow. The jobs came to you? Just like social work, I thought. Just kidding. As you'll hear in the interview, I describe my job prep as, quote, "I hope they will hire me," end quote. Now, I know that a lot has changed in how schools of social work help students prepare for the job market. And much of that is thanks to today's guests, Jennifer Luna, Michelle Woods, and Cindy Snell. They're the co-authors of the NASW Press book, The Social Work Career Guidebook: How to Land Your Ideal Job and Build a Legacy. And I spoke with them in June 2025 at the NASW National Conference in Chicago, Illinois. Jennifer Luna, MSSW, CSWM, is a social work career coach, consultant, author, and speaker with over 30 years of experience in career development and leadership for mission-driven leaders and organizations. Now, longtime listeners of the podcast might remember Jennifer because she interviewed me way back in 2008 for episode 38, the 1-year anniversary episode of the Social Work Podcast. At the time, she was 13 years into her 28-year career as the director of the Donito Center for Career Services and Alumni Relations at UT Austin's Steve Hicks School of Social Work. She collaborates with schools of social work, the National Association of Social Workers, and the Council on Social Work Education on professional development, macro social work, academic branding, and professional identity. Jennifer's mission is to empower social workers to achieve their career goals and make a positive impact in the world. Currently, Jennifer serves as Director of Programs for the Network for Social Work Management. Michelle Woods, LMSW, Clinical and Macro Practice, serves as the Director of Career Services at the University of Michigan School of Social Work. With over 25 years of experience, she leads an office focused on professional development for students and alumni, employer recruitment, and alumni employment data collection. Michelle earned her BA in Political Science and MSW at the University of Michigan. And last but not least, Cindy Snell, MED, has been the Director of Career Services and Alumni Relationships at the Boston College School of Social Work for the past 20 years. She has established comprehensive career services offices for graduate students and alumni at the School of Social Work at Boston College, and previously at the Heller School for Social Policy and Management at Brandeis University. As a one-person office, she has a strong understanding of all aspects of the career development process and continues to be inspired by supporting others in reaching their goals. Today's episode follows the arc of the social work career. We start with Jennifer sharing tips for getting a job, and then Michelle talks about how to prepare for and negotiate after getting a job offer. And Cindy talks about, once you've been in a job for a while, how to find a new job or even change your focus, say from micro to macro social work. And then we end with Jennifer again talking about branding in social work. And now, without further ado, on to episode 149 of the Social Work Podcast, Getting the Social Work Job You Want, an interview with Jennifer Luna, Michelle Woods, and Cindy Snell. All right, Jennifer, Cindy, and Michelle, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. Jennifer, so in 1996, when I graduated with my MSW from UT Austin, my approach to looking for a job was who's hiring and who will hire me.
Okay.
Is that still the best advice for how a social work grad should look for a job?
That's not the best advice, and I hope I didn't give you that advice. My thought has always been that luck equals opportunity plus preparation. And so the best thing you can do when you're looking for a job is to prepare for the job search. And that process doesn't just happen overnight. That's something that takes maybe even a couple of months to do. Or if you're a student, you might start doing that prior to entering your final field. But for any social worker, you have to be able to spend some time to prepare. So a good example of this would be I've seen some people who prepare for the job the night before that they're going to apply, and they don't have a cover letter, their resume's not in order, and that not only does that cause anxiety, but oftentimes they make spelling errors or they don't write the materials to fit the job that they want. So what I encourage people to do is to really have a good resume to start off with, and a good resume should entail a professional summary up at the top that would be something that would kind of summarize all of your skills, transferable skills, and that way an employer doesn't have to read all the way down to the bottom to get to your experience. Once you have that professional summary written, then you can use that for your LinkedIn page, you can use it for your cover letter, you can use it for your elevator pitch. I think the summary is so key to moving your job search along. In terms of thinking about resumes, just a few tips would be, it doesn't have to be one page. Most social work resumes are not one page. I prefer to have the education down after the experience because if you're a new graduate, as we're often really proud that we graduated from our schools, that's not usually the first thing employers want to see because they may see, oh, no, new graduate, no experience. So I recommend a summary, dive into the experience, and then put the graduation date. For the cover letter, I do think that you should tailor the cover letter for every job. Oftentimes, though, with new applications, like you apply for the job through the employer or through Indeed or something like that. So you have to answer a lot of questions. That's another thing that takes time. Like sometimes you think you can just submit a resume and a cover letter, and then you have to fill out a really long application. But for the cover letter, definitely tailor that towards the job. And I'm going to put a plug in for ChatGPT here. I've actually done a lot of work on ChatGPT is using it as a tool for job seekers. And it can be, you don't want to have your letter written by ChatGPT, but you can always upload your resume and ask ChatGPT, how would I be a good fit for this position? Or if it's a field that you don't have experience in, you might say something like, how could I transfer my skills in school social work to a hospital setting? What terms could I use? And ChatGPT will give you that information, and it's a time saver and it's a tool. However, if you use it to write your letter, you're going to get caught. Because there's certain things that ChatGPT has that it adds to every document. I remember there was a time when I was writing some sample cover letters when ChatGPT just came out, and my son was applying for jobs, and I was using ChatGPT to give me ideas, and I had it write a cover letter for me because it was brand new, so I just wanted to see what it was going to do. I swear I wasn't going to use it. But anyway, my son, he asked me, he's in a completely different industry, and he said, hey, I wrote a letter, can you take a look at it? And the opening paragraph was exactly the same for hospitality as it was for social work, using the words like kindly, I'm strongly interested in. And so that's how I know that there's certain patterns that employers will see. But it is an excellent tool for doing research.
So my first job was working for the child and adolescent psychiatric emergency team. And when I got the job, I didn't even think at all about salary negotiation. I was just glad to have a job. I've since learned that one can negotiate salary. So how should social workers think about salary negotiation?
Sure. So you're not alone. That is a common story that I hear from students and alumni who are invested in their job search, and they end up getting an offer and they think they have to accept right away, and they don't have the ability to take the time to negotiate. And that's absolutely incorrect. You, as a potential employee, are invested in not only doing a great job for an employer, but being recognized for the work that you do, and that is your salary. And so you should always negotiate your salary when you go in and you are in onboarding or trying to accept an offer with an organization. And let me tell you a story. We had one alum who, actually two stories. So one alum who came in and had reported that they got this really great job as a school social worker with a charter school. And part of the position had their salary, and then they were concerned about benefits. Benefits did not come because it was a charter school, and also they weren't offered supervision as part of their job. And so they accepted. They didn't think that they had the ability to try to negotiate some of those additional like benefits and supervision. And so we were talking about that, and I was like, yes, you do. You can certainly do that. And a friend who got hired a couple of months afterwards, same program, negotiated and was able to get additional benefits, a bonus, and money for supervision as part. So one did not negotiate and thought they could not, and then the other took the time to do that and got those additional same job, about the same time. So remarkable different outcomes there. And then I have another story of an alum who did not negotiate, but could. And they realized that within the market rate, they had the ability to add about $2,000 to $3,000 more for their starting salary, because the employer just gave them the bottom amount, the starting salary, bottom amount. They accepted it. Didn't think they had to negotiate, but they could, and realized that they left on the table, if it was $2,000 more over 5 years, they left $10,000 off the table for their salary right there by just not negotiating. So always negotiate and take the time to prepare for the negotiating process. So if you're not familiar with negotiation, which a lot of social workers aren't, they're afraid to do that. And one, they think that employers are not expecting them to negotiate, and that is a part of the employment process, the hiring process. You can negotiate. So you're not doing anything that other job seekers aren't doing. So you always want to negotiate, and you want to practice beforehand. Take the time to do that. Take the time to, if you're not familiar with negotiating, go to a farmer's market or a sales, like a treasure store or Salvation Army, where you can kind of negotiate the price of different items and get in the habit of just going back and forth and being comfortable with having that conversation. But also take the time to research your market value before you go into an interview. While you are preparing your documents, like your cover letter and your resume, take some time to research what the market value is for the jobs that you're applying to. And that can be done through informational interviewing, can be done for looking at public institutions that have, like universities, hospitals. They often have their salary grades and different employment rates that they pay different levels of employers, so you know what the starting salary is for different positions, and you can look at similar positions to see what the rate is for the job that you're trying to apply to. Also, use your alumni association and your career services offices at your school of social work. We collect a lot of alumni data regarding employer salaries. And oftentimes you can circle back with that person, have a conversation about different roles and the market rate that alumni are achieving within those different social work positions. So it's important to make sure that you know the market rate for the positions that you're applying to. So when you go in and you get a job offer, and a lot of you will do that, and you'll get surprised at some point that you actually, it's working, that you got the job and they're offering you the position, and they're going to say that they're going to offer the position to you for X amount of money. And you're going to be excited because it happened. And so you definitely want to take some time to think about the offer, because that is at the point that you're going to start the negotiation. It doesn't start any time before you actually get the offer. So once the offer happens, you say thank you and show your enthusiasm for the position, and then ask for a couple of days to review the offer, because that's when you're going to go back and look at all of the conversations and the research that you had regarding the market rate to see where that offer falls within the market rate for the job that you've been offered. So is it high? Is it low? What type of room do you have to negotiate? And you also have some time to go and review benefits so that you are familiar with what are the health benefits, what are retirement, is there any type of relocation money that is part of the offer, a bonus, a signing bonus, all of that you get a chance to review, and then have a conversation with people, with partners, people in your family, about any of your specific needs. And then once you ask for a couple of days or some time to review, at that time you will circle back and go and talk to the employer about any negotiation you want to occur at that time. So your counter offer, and also any adjustments to any of the relocation or benefits or supervision that I kind of talked about if you need money to help with your professional development. And then also taking time to think about the negotiation, and taking some time over several days to review gives you some time to write what you want to say, and to be very specific with the employer about the details. And then you can practice. A lot of times alumni will call me, they'll write down what they want to negotiate, and then they'll practice with me before they call the employer back. And then that way they have a clear rationale for why they want the additional money or the adjustment in the benefit and the offer. And then at that time, typically the employer will review what you're offer and typically say, give me a couple of days to see what I can do. And that's fine. That's a good sign, because that means that you gave them something to think about. The other tip is try not to be nervous at this point, because they want you. They gave you an offer. So it means that they want to hire you, and they're invested in their job search and having a great outcome. So give them a couple of days and think about it. And when they call you back, they will sometimes have a counter offer. They may not be able to do everything that you're asking, but they may be able to meet you halfway on some of your counter offer, your suggestions. And then at that time, if you've done the research, you can have an idea of what's acceptable to you and whether or not you want to move forward with the job offer. And the other thing is always get everything in writing. So when you are at the final stages, when everything has been kind of accepted, and this is the final offer with this adjustment of benefits and relocation and all of that, make sure they follow it up with a written explanation of what you've agreed on, so that if anything happens in the interim, because life happens, somebody may end up not being there when you have your start date. And so you want to make sure that everything you've negotiated, it has been written down and agreed upon, and that you have a copy of it.
That's great. One quick follow-up. Is there any way of knowing when you see a salary, for example, if it is negotiable or not?
It's all negotiable. Whether or not there's any movement in or accepting what you're negotiating, that can be a variable depending on the financial status of the organization. But typically employers have a range that they can work with each position. And so they may have some wiggle room there. So you always want to ask and negotiate. The other, if they're not able to make any movement, then they may say that I'm not able to offer you additional money at this time, but maybe I can give you a signing bonus in exchange for that. Or maybe at the 6 month or 1 year period of you meeting with the organization, and we're looking at your annual review, or after your probationary period, maybe we can circle back and look at some negotiation at that time.
So I think the salary negotiation tips are so insightful, because it's really about more than just the dollar amount. It's a whole sort of like what's the package, right? So let's say that you've been in a job for a while. I remember I was worked for Austin Travis County MHMR for many years, and I was thinking about, like, am I going to stay here the rest of my life? People were getting jobs other places. A lot of people got jobs for higher salaries. And so I was just trying to think that through. But it's hard when you're in a job to think about getting another job, even if you're not happy. So do you have any tips or advice for kind of how to think about shifting careers or career trajectory over time?
Sure. I meet with a lot of alums that come back and are interested in either pivoting or are just unhappy in the role they are currently. And just like you said, aren't sure kind of where to go from there. I can think of one person who had been in medical social work since she graduated from her MSW program, had done that for a while, and it just wasn't fitting her lifestyle anymore, and was unable to think of herself as anything but a medical social worker. You sort of identify yourself that way, and not only do you know nothing about other fields, but you can't even define yourself in a different way. And so that's where self-assessment really comes into play. That's really important, to spend some time figuring out what skills you have, what your values are, what's important to you, how work fits into the other aspects of your life. And then what is it about the current role that you want to take with you to the next thing, and what things you want to let go of? So in this particular case, the kind of fast pace of medical social work was getting tiring for her. She had kind of done it for too long. She liked some of the work that she did individually with clients, but she'd also remembered doing some research back when she was in an MSW program, and she was wondering if there were going to some ways that she could integrate that. So I had her spend some time doing that self-analysis, trying to figure out what sort of keywords that she could identify for herself. So as she started to look at other job opportunities, as she started to network, she had sort of a framework in which she was working. And so one of the informational interviews she went on, she ended up identifying this opportunity at a university that had a research center that was working on a new intervention around depression, and was wanting to apply that intervention to the college students there and track to see its effectiveness. So she had the opportunity to bring her expertise in depression, but kind of implement it in a new way and add this research piece. And so that was a great success story. I can think of somebody else that I met with about a month ago, and she said she was 2 years out of her MSW, and she said to me, I don't think I want to be a clinical social worker anymore. I want to be macro. And I was like, okay. I think sometimes when you're at that breaking point, and social workers can reach that sort of burnout point, you kind of want to throw everything away. You want to say, I don't want to do anything like what I'm doing now. And so we spent some time kind of unpacking that, asking some prompts that allowed her to be a little bit more reflective about what it was that she wasn't happy about. In her case, she had worked in sexual assault since she was a undergrad and continued to do that work both through her MSW and was currently doing that work. And she literally just quit her job. Like, she couldn't do it anymore. And she said it was just getting to be too much. And they also had asked her to carry a pager. And that really changed things for her. It really meant that she couldn't create the boundaries that allowed her to do that intense work. And she also shared with me that she had two other passions that this pager was getting in the way of. One, she was a visual artist. And she was also very committed to trauma-informed yoga. And in her jobs before, she was able to do those things on the side, but because of the stress and because of the kind of 24/7, she wasn't able to do that anymore. So we talked a little bit about those other interests and about whether she wanted to throw the clinical piece away or not. And one of the critical things I asked her was whether it was important to her to go on and get an advanced clinical license. And she said yes. And I said, okay, if that's one of your goals, you're really going to have to figure out how to continue to do clinical social work until you get that license. So through the course of conversation, she said that there were aspects of working with clients that she really liked. And she was trying to figure out ways that she could integrate all those three parts of herself into one job. And she was getting offers to do some of that other trauma-informed work that she was having to turn down. And so I suggested to her, maybe you don't need to find one job that integrates all of that. Maybe you can do these three things separately. And she just had this look of relief over her. Like, I can do that. I don't have to find one job that incorporates all of that. And said, we certainly can talk about clinical roles that you can have that could be trauma-informed, and you're allowed to kind of use your yoga-informed, but you don't have to have all that in one job. And so that was a real relief to her. And so we talked about roles that she could play clinically that she felt more comfortable in. So we talked about, there was some part-time roles at a university like she worked at before, but not in sexual assault. There was a local university that was a women's college that really appealed to her. Or she started to look at private practices that had that sort of trauma-informed expressive therapy component to it that allowed her to do that work. So I sort of sent her on her way to investigate some things, and she came back about 2 weeks later and said that she was really happy that she had gotten an interview for the college job and was really happy with the way things were starting to develop and was moving forward clinically in a way that she didn't think she could do before. So I think it's important throughout your lifetime, as things change for you, to take time to reflect on past jobs. Figure out what's working for you, figure out whether this is still what you want to do, what might be missing, what might not be comfortable, in ways that you could either change that in the place that you're in, or whether that means pivoting to something else.
So thinking about switching careers, thinking about the pieces of the jobs or the activities that you like, it made me think about this idea of how you see yourself as a social worker. And that made me think of this idea of branding, which I know you talk about in the book.
Sure. Professional branding, it's interesting because sometimes social workers don't really like that term. Like, they associate it with corporate America or something like that. So over the years, I've really tried to normalize professional branding in social work. The way I like to start off with is, just by entering the profession of social work, we already wear a brand. Social workers already have a brand coming in, and usually it's not great. And so the most important thing for us to remember is we have to be very intentional about our brand. Secondly, anybody or everybody has a brand, whether you want one or not. And so you may not think you've worked on your professional brand, but you have, because everybody knows you by something. So I try to encourage social workers to be very intentional by thinking about not only what they want people to remember them by, but also it's important to be authentic, because if you're not authentic about your brand, then you'll be trying to be someone else. And I also like people to think about lived experiences, which is so important. We will hear a lot about branding, and we'll hear people talk about your knowledge, skills, experience. All of that is very important. Knowledge areas could be broken up into both theoretical knowledge, like maybe the clinical frameworks that you know, but also practical knowledge is very important too. If you're a supervisor, you probably don't want to have to teach somebody how to go get Social Security or Medicaid. You want them to come in with that. So those complex systems is an area of knowledge that sometimes we don't think about. But when we think about a brand, I can think of several people throughout my career that I've worked with that have kind of been that go-to person for certain complex processes that I don't want to have to learn, right? So all of those things can be incorporated. But another issue that I found is a lot of times people will have imposter syndrome for one reason or another, and I don't even really like to call it that, but for lack of better words, oftentimes folks will come in and they'll think that maybe because they're from a different culture or ability or disability or gender or socioeconomic background, whatever, you can always feel imposter syndrome. And one thing I've recognized is that oftentimes what makes you feel that way is part of your brand, and that's what people remember you by. And I think it's something to embrace. It's important, and this is where we go back to lived experiences. When I think about my own professional brand, I grew up in El Paso, and both my sisters went to become business people, and my father was in business, and I decided to do cosmetology school for a couple of years while I was in high school, till I decided what I wanted to be. And I love cosmetology school because I love talking to people, and actually won, this will be a big surprise, I won state championship for extemporaneous speaking. And so I learned so much about myself that I maybe would not have known. And when I went to college, I did the hair and nails as side hustle type thing. But that is one of the things that made me want to go into social work, because I was not even very good at those things, but I was really good. I had clients that would come back because they wanted to talk to me. And I became a really great spokesperson for our beauty shop, which I know sounds silly, but that lived experience was truly a part of my professional brand. So I encourage you, to think about what you did growing up, where you were in the family, if you were the oldest, middle child, the youngest, if you were in marching band, or maybe HOA. That's Homeowners Association.
4-H.
4-H. Thank you. This is, this is the sign of becoming an adult, when you get the 4-H club mixed up with the HOA. Anyhow, really, reach back and think about, not just what you bring, but also, what your lived experience. And then I just have one other thing to say. Oftentimes it's also good to look at people you admire and kind of see what they have done to intentionally work on their brand. And I've kind of been doing this lately, reinventing myself since I retired, because I was in the same job for almost 30 years. And I, kind of retired, and I thought, I know what I want to do, but, I'm not quite sure how to get there, but I know who I want to be like. And I'll go back to my son again. We have a saying when we're about to do something that's kind of anxiety provoking, we always say, go be her or go be him. And that has really been profound for me these past couple of years, because I know what I want to be and I know who her is. I don't know who she is, but I know I want to be her.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here and talking with us about career. This is so insightful, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
Yes, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm Jonathan Singer, and thanks for being with me today for another episode of the Social Work Podcast. If you missed an episode or have suggestions for future episodes, please visit socialworkpodcast.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit our online store at cafepress.com/swpodcast. To all the social workers out there, keep up the good work. We'll see you next time at the Social Work Podcast.